This happened at the very end of August, about a week before I was supposed to head back to school. My family has this small beach house on the New England coast. It's not fancy peeling white paint, creaky wood floors, and a smell of salt water baked into the walls, but it's been ours for decades. We only ever go there in the summer, and by the end of August the place is usually empty. My parents like to close it up right after Labor Day. I hadn't been there in a couple of years because of my internship schedule, but this summer I was between jobs and had a little more freedom. My parents said I could go down there for a few days on my own to unwind before the semester started. It sounded perfect. A couple of quiet nights by the water, maybe some long walks on the sand, the usual end of summer nostalgia. The first night was fine, quiet actually. The little town near the house had already gone back to being off-season sleepy, so most of the shops were shuttered and the beaches were nearly empty. I brought a few groceries with me, grilled some fish on the porch, and fell asleep to the sound of waves breaking against the rocks. The second night was when things started feeling strange. Around midnight, I was woken up by a sound coming from the back of the house. At first, I thought it was just the wind rattling the old shutters, but as I sat up in bed, I realized it wasn't wind at all. It was a soft but deliberate scraping noise metal on wood, like someone testing a lock with a piece of wire. The weird thing is, the back of the house faces the dunes. There's no boardwalk or easy access. Anyone trying to get to the back would have had to climb over the dune grass or come up from the beach. My first instinct was to grab my phone and call my dad, but it was past midnight and I didn't want to freak him out. Plus, part of me thought I was imagining it. Old houses make weird noises and I'm the type to psych myself out. I stayed awake for a while listening, but the sound eventually stopped. I figured maybe it was a raccoon or some other animal rummaging around. I fell back asleep. The next morning, I walked around the house just to reassure myself. Everything looked normal until I got to the back door. That's when I noticed the screen door hanging a little crooked, like someone had tugged on it hard. And right above the handle was a thin scratch, like something sharp had been dragged across the paint. It wasn't deep, but it was new. I would have noticed it the night before when I locked up. I tried not to overthink it. Told myself again it was an animal or maybe the salt air corroding the hinges. But that second night, the sound came back, only this time it was louder. It wasn't just scraping now. There was also a low thudding sound, like someone pressing their palm flat against the wood. Slow, deliberate thumps spaced out by a few seconds each. I got out of bed and crept to the kitchen, which has a window looking out at the back porch. I didn't turn on any lights because I didn't want to give away that I was awake. My heart was hammering as I peeked out the window. At first I didn't see anything, just the dunes and the dark outline of the beach beyond. But then, as my eyes adjusted, I caught movement. A shape of person standing just beyond the edge of the porch steps, not moving, just standing there. Their face was hidden by the shadow of a hood, but I could tell they were looking straight at the house. Straight at me. I ducked back immediately and grabbed the old wooden baseball bat my dad keeps by the kitchen door. My phone was in my bedroom charging. I didn't dare run for it because that would mean crossing the hallway in full view of the windows. I stayed crouched under the kitchen counter for what felt like an eternity. Eventually, I got the courage to peek out again. The figure was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just sat in the living room with every light on, clutching the bat and waiting for dawn. When the sun came up, I called my dad and told him everything. He tried to calm me down, saying maybe it was just a drunk local or some teenager messing around. He suggested I lock everything up tight and drive back home that afternoon. I thought about doing that, but a part of me was angry. This was my family's place. Whoever that was had no right to scare me off. So instead of leaving, I decided to check the dunes behind the house. I slipped on some sneakers and walked out back. At first, it was just normal dune grass and sand. But about 10 feet from the porch, I saw footprints. Bare feet. The prints were deep enough that whoever made them had been standing still for a while. They led from the beach up to the porch steps, then turned sharply and disappeared back toward the water. I followed them for a little ways, but they dissolved into the sand closer to the tide line. That's when I noticed something else, something I still can't explain. Right at the edge of the water, someone had drawn a circle in the sand about 5 feet wide. Inside the circle were smaller shaped symbols maybe, or just random marks scratched with a stick. They were messy but intentional. Rolled in and washed over the whole thing, erasing it before I could get a picture. I went back to the house, locked every door, and started packing. But as I was stuffing clothes into my bag, I heard it again. The scraping sound this time at the front door. I froze. The sun was up now. I had locked everything. Whoever it was had come back. The sound stopped for a moment, then the door handle started to rattle violently, like someone was testing it with both hands. I grabbed the bat and backed toward the hallway. My phone was on the kitchen counter where I'd left it. I lunged for it, almost tripping over my bag, and dialed 911. Before the dispatcher could even answer, the rattling stopped. I peeked through the side window of the door. The porch was empty. The police arrived 15 minutes later. 2 officers walked around the property but found nothing, no one hiding, no fresh footprints, no sign of forced entry. They told me they'd patrol the area for the next few nights, but that it was probably just a prank. I didn't argue. I just threw my stuff in the car and left. It's been a few weeks since then. My parents went back to close up the house for the season. They said everything was fine, but I haven't been able to shake the image of that hooded figure standing in the dunes. And every time I think about the circle in the sand, I feel this pit in my stomach like I left something unfinished. That was my last night at the beach house. I don't know if I'll ever go back. This happened when I was 17, right before my senior year of high school. My best friend Derek had just gotten his driver's license, and suddenly every night turned into an adventure. We lived in a small town, the kind where there's not much to do once summer winds down. So we spent our nights cruising back roads, hanging out at gas stations, and occasionally daring each other to explore places we probably shouldn't have. That's how we ended up at the old carnival grounds. Every summer when I was a kid, a traveling carnival would set up on this big field about 10 minutes outside town. It wasn't anything huge, just some rickety rides, food stalls, and a few games rigged to drain your wallet. But when you're little, it feels like magic. I can still remember eating cotton candy while the Ferris wheel lights blinked against the dark sky. But then around the time I hit middle school, the carnival stopped coming. The field sat empty for years, and eventually the landowner just left the rusting ticket booths and a couple of old trailers to rot. Locals started calling it the graveyard. So one night, at the end of August, Derek pulled up in his beat-up Honda Civic and grinned at me. "Want to go to the graveyard?" Normally, I would have said no. The place had a reputation. People whispered about squatters living there. And once a kid swore he saw someone moving inside one of the trailers with no lights on. But the night was hot and we were bored, and Derek had that wild look in his eye like he wasn't going to take no for an answer. We parked on the edge of the field around 11 p.m. The moon was full, and the grass shimmered silver under it. The old ticket booth still stood near the dirt path, its windows shattered, wood eaten by termites. Past it, you could see the silhouette of the Ferris wheel. Not a real one, just the frame that had been left behind a tall skeleton of rusted metal jutting up against the stars. As soon as we stepped out of the car, I felt this heaviness settle in my chest. The air was still, not even the usual buzz of crickets. Derek just laughed, tossed me a flashlight, and started walking toward the trailers. The first couple were empty, stripped of anything valuable long ago. Broken chairs, beer cans, graffiti. We were just about to turn back when Derek spotted a larger trailer near the far edge of the lot. Its door was closed. The windows, though cracked, weren't boarded up like the others. "Bet you won't open it," he said, smirking. I told him he was insane, but I didn't want to look like a coward. So I climbed the 3 steps, gripped the handle, and pulled. The door screeched open louder than I expected, echoing across the whole field. Inside, it smelled damp and rotten. The floor was warped and the wallpaper peeled in long curls. But what made me freeze wasn't the condition of the trailer. It was the fact that the interior was almost perfectly intact. There was a table with 3 chairs around it, as if someone had just stepped out for a smoke. A thin blanket was folded neatly on the couch. A half-empty glass sat on the counter. "This place looks lived in," Derek whispered. I wanted to leave right then, but he pushed further inside, shining his light along the walls. That's when we noticed the drawings. Hundreds of them, pinned up with nails, taped, even stapled to the thin wood paneling. Each one was a crude sketch of faces, not cartoon faces, real ones. Detailed, staring eyes and sharp outlines. Some were smiling, some frowning, some with mouths hanging open like they were screaming. And the strangest part, a handful of them looked familiar. I spotted one that resembled our old math teacher. Another that looked almost exactly like the cashier at the grocery store near my house. These weren't random doodles. Whoever drew them knew these people. "Dude, that's creepy as hell," Derek said, but he was grinning. He thought it was funny. Then I saw it. On the far wall, right above the couch, was a fresh sheet of paper tacked up higher than the rest. The lines were darker, the paper cleaner, like it hadn't been there long. And the face staring back at me was my own. Not a guess, not sort of looks like me. It was me. The curve of my jaw, the little scar by my eyebrow. It was a perfect sketch of me staring straight ahead. I didn't even realize I'd dropped the flashlight until Derek hissed, "What the hell, man?" He picked it up, shone it back on the drawing, and his smile vanished. We both bolted out of there without saying a word. We were halfway across the field when I heard it. A creak, the sound of that trailer door swinging shut behind us. Neither of us turned around. We dove into Derek's car, slammed the doors, and peeled out, gravel spitting behind us. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those faces, especially the one of me. The next day, I tried to explain it to myself. Maybe some local kids had broken in and made the sketches as a joke. Maybe Derek had set me up somehow, though I couldn't imagine how he would have pulled it off so perfectly. But a few weeks later, just after school started, I was at the gas station when I saw a flyer pinned to the bulletin board by the counter. My stomach dropped. It was a missing person poster. A girl from the next town over. And I swear to you, her face was one of the sketches in that trailer. I never went back to the carnival grounds. Neither did Derek. We never even talked about it again. But sometimes I wonder if that trailer is still out there, filling up with more faces every summer. Maybe one day yours will be on the wall too. This happened 3 summers ago. I was 19 and had just finished my first year of college. A couple of friends from high school, Mark, Jamie, and Claire, wanted to do one last camping trip before we all went our separate ways. We picked a spot in the woods about an hour outside town, a place near a shallow lake where we'd camped before. It was late August and the nights were starting to feel cooler. Perfect camping weather. We brought a couple of tents, fishing gear, and just enough food to last the weekend. We wanted it to be simple, no phones, no distractions, just us and the woods. The first night was perfect. We sat around the fire, telling dumb stories, roasting marshmallows, and laughing about things that already felt like they happened a lifetime ago. When we finally crawled into our tents, I fell asleep almost instantly to the sound of crickets and the crackle of dying embers. The second night, though, that's the one I can't forget. It started with the fire. We'd been sitting around for a while when Claire pointed out something strange. The flames weren't burning normally. They were leaning hard to one side like there was a strong wind, but the air was completely still. The leaves in the trees didn't even stir. Mark joked that it was a sign, but none of us laughed. After a few minutes, the fire snapped back to normal like nothing happened. We tried to brush it off, but the mood around the camp shifted. The woods felt heavier, like they were listening. Later, when we were getting ready for bed, Jamie thought he saw someone standing at the edge of the tree line. Just a figure, half hidden in shadow. We all shined our flashlights, but there was nothing there. He swore up and down that he wasn't imagining it. I didn't see anything myself. At least not then. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to the sound of sticks snapping outside my tent. At first, I figured it was an animal, but then I heard its footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling. I held my breath and listened. The steps would move a few feet, then pause. Move again, pause. I wanted to call out to Mark, whose tent was closest, but something in me said not to. The air was thick with this pressure, like if I made a sound, something bad would happen. Eventually, the steps faded into the distance. I lay there frozen until exhaustion took over. In the morning, I stumbled out of my tent, expecting to see everyone else shaken up too. But Claire and Mark were cheerful, cooking breakfast. Jamie, though he looked awful. His eyes were bloodshot, and he kept staring into the woods like he expected something to come walking out at any second. When I asked what was wrong, he told me he hadn't slept. He said he kept hearing someone whispering outside his tent all night. Not words he could understand, just a low, constant murmur. That was the first time I thought about packing up and leaving, but we'd only been there 2 nights, and Mark convinced us to stay for one more. "It's our last summer," he said. "Don't ruin it with ghost stories." So we stayed. That night, we built the biggest fire yet, like the light could keep whatever was out there away. We tried to act normal, but no one really wanted to talk. At some point, Claire started humming to herself some random tune to fill the silence. That's when I noticed something. The humming didn't stop when she did. It took me a second to realize it. Claire trailed off, but the sound kept going. The exact same tune, coming from the woods behind us. Jamie jumped to his feet, shining his flashlight toward the sound, but the beam hit nothing except trees. The humming stopped. That was enough. We didn't even discuss it. We started breaking down camp right then, tossing stuff into bags, stamping out the fire. The forest felt alive, like it was pressing in closer with every minute. We were nearly done when I realized Jamie wasn't helping. I looked around and saw him standing at the edge of the tree line, his back to us. He was completely still, staring into the dark. "Jamie!" I called, but he didn't move. Mark jogged over, grabbed his shoulder, and spun him around. Jamie's face was pale, his lips moving soundlessly. He looked like he was in a trance. "What the hell, man?" Mark snapped, shaking him. Finally, Jamie blinked and muttered, "It wants us to stay." That was it. We threw everything into the car and peeled out of there. None of us said a word until we hit the highway. The next day, when I checked my backpack, I found something that didn't belong to me. Stuffed in the side pocket was a scrap of paper, yellowed and crinkled. On it was a rough charcoal sketch of 4 figures sitting around a campfire. U.S. I still have that paper. I don't know why I keep it. Maybe as proof that it wasn't just some group hallucination. We haven't been camping since. None of us. And Jamie, he dropped out of college that fall, moved 2 states away. We keep in touch, but he refuses to talk about that night. If you bring it up, he just hangs up the phone. I think about it every August, when the air gets cooler and the nights grow long. About that fire that leaned without wind. About the humming that didn't come from Claire. And about Jamie staring into the trees like something was staring back. It feels like unfinished business, but I'll never go back to that lake. Some endings aren't meant to be revisited. That was the last campfire. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more creepy true stories. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.